Here's something suspicious for you in Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 film Vertigo. By the end of each of the character Gavin Elster scenes in the film, did you know without fail Gavin always ends up on the left? Even when Gavin walks to the right to leave Ernie's restaurant, at the very last moment he turns left. Vertigo really wants you and me to pay attention to this right to left motion for some reason. It's practically a neon sign during the opening credits. This is followed by the first action sequence of the film, the rooftop chase, which again moves in a leftward direction. On the surface level, the only information you and I need to take away from the rooftop chase is that the story is set in 1950s San Francisco, where James Stewart plays one of the good guys fighting for justice, but he has a fear of heights, and that's it. But on closer examination, Alfred Hitchcock included so many clues in the rooftop chase, it can function as a plot summary for both the Vertigo you and I both are familiar with, as well as for the secret other Vertigo Alfred Hitchcock has been hiding from you and me all these years. The rooftop chase points out two paths James Stewart's character Scotty will follow. Number one, there's the first half of the film where Scotty tries to do what's right by saving Madeline, the same way the police officer tries to save Scotty. In the second half, Scotty follows the other path, where instead of being the good guy, Scotty becomes the bad guy and ends up destroying Judy the way the fugitive commits a crime. But that's only the surface. There's a hidden message this scene is communicating, and the leftward direction is part of it. The scene has an intentional double nature. There are the two other characters, the police officer and the fugitive, two gunshots. Two times the line, "Give me your hand," is uttered. By the end of the scene, Scotty is left dangling between two outcomes. One, the police officer is doomed from trying to do what's right. Two, the fugitive escapes to the left and gets away with his crime. If you think about what other character in Vertigo commits a crime and gets away with it, does the fugitive symbolically remind you of anyone? Welcome to part 2 of Vertigo, investigating a Hitchcock masterpiece. I'm Mark, and if The Fugitive on the Rooftop reminded you of Gavin Elster, who gets away with murdering his wife, that's the answer I was hoping for. You know, you and I spend a lot of time looking through Scotty's eyes in Vertigo. It's easy to forget the moments when you and I leave Scotty's head and are able to see things Scotty shouldn't be able to see. Through Midge's eyes, not Scotty's, you and I watch Madeline leaving Scotty's apartment. You and I are treated to Midge's view from a high place of Scotty seated in the hospital. You and I can even enter Midge's head and see the brazier she's sketching. From there, you and I go to the Golden Gate Bridge. Through Madeline's eyes, you and I see the petals floating in the water. You and I enter Madeline's head and see the woods, which seem to fill her with dread. The same thing happens with Judy. Keep those woods in mind. I'm going to get back to that. And then there's Judy's flashback, which is, of course, the most controversial moment when you and I break from Scotty's viewpoint. And strangest of all, while Scotty is driving, the last thing in the world he should be able to see is his own car parked on the side of the road, but there it is right in front of your eyes. These are impossible viewpoints in Vertigo for Scotty, and they're in the movie for a reason. It only takes one viewing of Vertigo for you to realize that the Madeline Scotty thinks he knows isn't a real person and never was. You and I accept that, but after watching Vertigo a million times, it becomes obvious to me the other characters, like Judy and Gavin and Midge, aren't real either. Everyone in the movie is imaginary. It's all just a dream. The impossible viewpoints are reminders that these characters only exist in Scotty's head. Since no one is real, the question becomes not who they are in the Vertigo you and I already know, but what they represent in the Vertigo Alfred Hitchcock is hiding from you and me. There's a reason Vertigo goes crazy with duality and repetition. Just look at how Vertigo ends with Scotty and an older woman staring at a void where a beautiful lady has vanished. And compare that to the earlier scene at the McKittrick Hotel where Scotty and an older woman are left staring at a void where a beautiful lady has vanished. There's a reason for all this repetitive imagery and why different characters assume each other's identities in this psychodrama playing out in Scotty's head. If Gavin Elster assumes the same identity as the fugitive, what's the purpose of the double nature of the opening scene? And what does Gavin Elster really represent? The other character you know from the rooftop chase is the police officer. When Scotty's in trouble, rather than continue chasing the fugitive, the police officer reveals his kind, caring side by helping Scotty. These character traits ought to remind you of another character in the film, Midge. Midge is a caregiver figure to Scotty. She's got this urge to take care of Scotty, kind of like a parental urge to care for a child. The movie even makes a point of calling Midge Mother. Look at this scene at the bookshop where you and I learn the sad history of Carlotta and her child. The moment when the word child is mentioned, Alfred Hitchcock makes a point of showing Scotty. Midge gives Scotty a weird, concerned look, as if Midge suspects the mother and child in question are Midge and Scotty. Scotty is the child in this relationship, but there's never any mention in the movie of a father figure in Scotty's life. But where there's a mother, there has to be a father somewhere. If the police officer morphs into Midge, who represents the mother, does the fugitive blend together with Gavin to possibly represent the father? As if that idea isn't crazy enough, is the father in this interpretation a father Scotty as a child never knew? If in reality Scotty never knew his father, that might explain something weird that happens not once but twice in this story, which is actually a dream Scotty's having. His imaginary Midge can't recall Gavin Elster's name. And Scotty's imaginary Pop Liebel can't recall the rich, powerful man's name. Something's going on with Gavin Elster, so let's focus on Gavin a little bit, okay, and see what happens. There are only 3 confirmed fathers in the film as we know it. The mysterious man who sired and robbed Carlotta of her child, the man in Judy's family photos, and just for fun, the father at the inquest. But there's yet another possible father. There he is, descending from a high place at the bookshop with the mother figure, Midge. Of all the names Alfred Hitchcock could have chosen, he chose to codename this character Pop. Pop, you know, like Papa or Father. But what does this have to do with Gavin Elster? You already have the feeling Pop Liebel is not what he seems. Anyone who spends his days in a magically darkening bookshop can't have skin that tan, for one thing. But I'm going to show you this harmless old guy, Pop Liebel, is linked to the villain, Gavin Elster, in quite a few key ways, too many ways to dismiss as coincidence. We've got Pop talking about power and freedom, like Gavin talks about power and freedom. Scotty will echo the words later in a like father, like son kind of way. Gavin tempts Scotty with a drink. Pop tempts Scotty with a cigarette. Speaking of cigarettes, Pop and Gavin are the only 2 characters in the movie who smoke. Pop runs a bookshop, the Argosy, a word that means ship. Gavin runs a ship-making business. Pop carries eyeglasses in his pocket, just like Gavin. And maybe most important, Pop makes his exit from the movie positioned on the left side of the screen. Something specific is going on here because you and I are repeatedly shown that the left side of the screen is Gavin Elster's preferred comfort zone. Gavin Elster equals left. Gavin left. Gavin left, Gavin left, Gavin left. The 2 words answer a question. Hey, any idea where Gavin is? Gavin left. Likewise, the fugitive left. Pop left. Father left. Judy's father left, or in his case left permanently since he died. All this left stuff is a secret code, I think. Alfred Hitchcock in a lot of his movies likes to include visual puns and sight gags. I don't want to ruin Psycho for you, but there's a famous visual pun right here. And nobody needs me to explain the last shot of North by Northwest. I suspect Alfred Hitchcock is taking the sentence, Gavin left, and is equating it with father left to illustrate a concept on a subliminal level for a very specific reason. Anyway, looking at all this, it's starting to not sound so crazy to me to conclude Gavin Elster is an imaginary stand-in for Scotty's father, or Papa or Pop, whatever. A father who appears to have left Scotty at an early stage. In a world where sons are encouraged to follow in their father's footsteps, in Scotty's dream, Gavin is invented as a missing piece in Scotty's development. Presented as everything Scotty is not, but might feel like he needs to become. Scotty is kind of folksy, while Gavin is cosmopolitan. Scotty is unmarried, while Gavin describes himself as very happily married. Scotty is unemployed, while Gavin runs a lucrative business. Like a little boy and his dad, Scotty can't help but look up to Gavin, literally, as Gavin goes to a high place in his office, something Scotty, with his fear of heights, can't imitate. Ever thought about why they went to the trouble to build an elevated part of the office set for Gavin to wander around in? Maybe it's another sight gag. Look at how Scotty and Gavin mimic each other. In the main story, Gavin makes Judy imitate a dead woman, Carlotta. Scotty mirrors Gavin by making Judy imitate a dead woman, Madeline. But even subliminally, Scotty seems to be driven to remake himself into this Gavin identity he's created. See how Scotty and Gavin mirror each other's pose against a ship model? But Gavin isn't so much a reflection of Scotty as much as he is a fantasy reversal of Scotty. All of Scotty's perceived shortcomings might vanish if only Scotty could see a guy like Gavin looking back at himself in the mirror. Later, when Gavin is at his most villainous, he wears a blue suit and a blue necktie. I call this Gavin's murder suit. But when Scotty is being grilled at the inquest, it's Scotty, not Gavin, who is the one wearing the murder suit. Speaking of the inquest, Midge is so kind and caring, you'd think Midge would be at the inquest to give Scotty moral support. But she isn't there. Or is she? If the priest or father seated behind Gavin is a reminder of this whole father fantasy, is the older nun a mother superior? Is she supposed to be a visual stand-in for a mother? Is she another one of Midge's identities? Check out the blocking of this shot. Compare it to the placement of Judy's parents in this shot. You have the father on the left, separated from the mother superior and the younger nun on the right. Likewise, you have Judy's father on the left, separated from the mother and child on the right. I am bringing up these two shots because you and I get to hear two almost identical biographies in Vertigo. One is Carlotta's life story and the other is Judy's life story. They are reversals of each other, and I suspect they're connected to Scotty's childhood. In Carlotta's story, the mother dies, while in Judy's story, it's the father who dies. Judy confesses the Carlotta story was part real, part invented. Remember, like everyone else in the movie, Judy isn't real. She's an outgrowth of Scotty's subconscious. Judy's backstory concerning a father who left might be uncomfortably closer to Scotty's actual childhood, and Scotty might have invented the Carlotta story as a form of escapism. Based on the evidence so far, my theory is in Scotty's childhood, a father figure left, leaving Scotty to fend for himself with a mother. The movie basically begins this way, with Scotty alone with Midge in her apartment, playing with his cane like a little boy. Scotty and Midge were engaged once, but our belly buttons remind you and me that we were all engaged with our mothers once. Meanwhile, in the Carlotta story, things take a turn toward fantasy reversal. Scotty might resent society calling him a mama's boy, abandoned with only a feminine influence. Scotty might fantasize about filling that void with a masculine influence who stayed in the picture to guide Scotty, while it's the feminine influence who was thrown away, who died by her own hand, or who left. And speaking of left, I'll take you back one more time to the rooftop chase, but this time I'll show you exactly what's been hiding from you and me all these years. As the rooftop chase unfolds in a leftward direction, you and I are finally shown Coit Tower on the left side of the screen. Alfred Hitchcock specifically put this landmark in the movie to represent a symbol of masculinity. Coit Tower equals manhood. It might function as a height Scotty wants to reach, but feels like he can't. Scotty even reveals he sort of has a grudge against Coit Tower. On a side note, in addition to Coit Tower, there's another tower in the opening scene, right here. When the fugitive jumps to a higher level, he mans up. As he does, the tower gradually lights up. But when Scotty fails to imitate this, the tower is dark and unlit. Maybe that's just a coincidence, but look at what the characters are running away from. Since Vertigo deals so much in duality, you'd expect that a powerful masculine devil sitting on Scotty's left shoulder like Coit Tower would be balanced by an equally powerful feminine angel on the right shoulder. It turns out on the right side of the screen, the symbol of femininity the men are running from is none other than the Brocklebank apartment building. And there's some crazy things going on over at the Brocklebank. It's no accident that Alfred Hitchcock repeatedly shows you and me the one-way sign in front of the Brocklebank. What do you know? It's pointing to the left, like the fire escape sign, like Gavin Elster. Left might be a play on words representing a father's abandonment or an absence of masculinity, but it's also starting to represent the direction needed to achieve masculinity in this story. As a symbol of femininity, the Brocklebank on the right is a threat to masculinity. Watch this man exit the building. The way the scene is filmed and the speed the man is walking, the man doesn't have time to exit the frame, but he disappears when the film cuts to Scotty. In the man's place appears a woman, Madeline, as if by magic. It's as if the man is eclipsed by the feminine side. The feminine side is trying to take over. That could be why the men on the rooftop are running away from the Brocklebank, or away from what's right. These two forces, masculine and feminine, are waging a war, and Scotty is their battlefield. The kind, caring police officer's path turns back to the right, toward the Brocklebank, toward the direction of femininity. And this same path which Scotty takes to save Madeline would seem to spell disaster. While the fugitive's path to the left, toward some bad boy ideal of masculinity, the path Gavin is goading Scotty to take in destroying Judy, is apparently the path to masculine success, at least in 1950s America. 1950s American society is telling unemployed, unmarried Scotty that he doesn't measure up to their expectations of manhood. This is a post-war macho world of dominant males and subservient females. This world is telling Scotty he needs to suppress his feminine side or get rid of it. The first thing Scotty talks about in the movie is the fact he's a man wearing a corset, after all. Society is what's making Scotty invent this father figure to emulate. Scotty has been made by society to feel that the natural feminine side men have, or might deny they have, is an irritant under his skin, like a splinter. Society is convincing Scotty he needs to externalize the splinter by any means possible. That's what Gavin, with all his invented masculine influence, is pressuring Scotty to do, to conquer his feminine side, to divide himself from it, even to kill it. Midge, also known as Marjorie Wood, represents the splinter in Vertigo. When Midge asks the nurse if she can speak to the doctor, watch what the nurse does. The nurse's line is, "Doctor, Miss Wood." When the nurse says wood, she taps the doctor's wood desk. Watch it enough times and it begins to feel like Alfred Hitchcock wants Midge, who already represents the mother or femininity, to also be associated with wood for some reason. Meanwhile, Gavin, the father or masculinity, is represented by water, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. At the exact halfway point of Vertigo's runtime is this scene where Madeline and Scotty talk by the sea next to a tree. The tree in this scene is fake. It's not supposed to be there. It's a prop Alfred Hitchcock had constructed specifically for this scene. And I think I figured out why they went to all the trouble. As you know, Alfred Hitchcock and screenwriter Samuel Taylor invented Midge for the movie. Midge doesn't appear in the French novel that Vertigo is based on. Midge Wood is inserted into the picture like a splinter. Here you and I have a visual reminder of water and wood, butting heads against each other right in the exact middle of a film about masculinity and femininity battling it out for control of Scotty. The clash between water and wood, between masculinity and femininity, also appears in the scene when Scotty and Madeline visit the forest. The rings in the cross-section of the tree look like ripples in water to me. It's like water and wood are forever locked in a war, and the cross-section is just a freeze frame. Earlier I hinted that Scotty's vertigo is really a metaphor for something else. I also mentioned those ominous woods. Wood is where splinters come from. A splinter, especially in your foot, can cause instability. Instability is like the dizzying sensation of vertigo. And maybe in the middle of Scotty's whirlpool of instability, he craves a state of mind that's more stable. Okay, maybe that's another sight gag, maybe not, but to me, the high place Scotty's really afraid of is society's expectations of manhood. And the vertigo Scotty suffers from is really the dread that society will detect any traces of femininity in him. With all this in mind, I tried to pay attention to Wood in the movie. In the first big dialogue scene, there's Midge Wood's pencil. At one point, Midge even inserts the pencil in her mouth, the way Alfred Hitchcock inserts Midge in the story, the way a splinter of femininity is inserted in Scotty, hindering Scotty's power and freedom like a corset. Scotty even points out that a pencil rolling off his imaginary desk might be the cause of his problem. Next is Scotty's cane. Scotty can't wait to throw it out a window, which speaks for itself. When Scotty climbs the kitchen stool, you and I can see the cane. But when he faints, it disappears without a trace, without a sound. Midge Wood has become the thing supporting Scotty. When you and I get to Gavin Elster's office, things get complicated. His walls are paneled in wood, but Gavin has obliterated almost every surface of wood with pictures, as if he's trying to keep the wood at bay. If you and I backtrack a minute to Midge's apartment, there's something weird going on. Out the window, you can see Scotty's apartment. It's located roughly over Scotty's head here. Therefore, in the view from Scotty's apartment, Midge's apartment would be right about here, in the shadow of Coit Tower, the symbol for masculinity. Symbolically, this means both masculinity and femininity are constantly observing Scotty right where he lives. Midge's secret color in the movie is yellow. It's the color her apartment is painted. It's the color of her sweater when you and I are introduced to her. It's the color of her kitchen stool that makes Scotty dizzy, and where she hides her museum book when she plays a joke on Scotty. But notice how her apartment is trimmed in blue. Blue is the color of Gavin Elster's murder suit. It's the color of water, which I'm about to show you is representative of Gavin. The blue trim is the first clue that Gavin, or masculinity, is leaking in here, trying to drown Midge or to dominate femininity. Anyway, it's hard to see at first, but there's a drawing of a marine in Midge's apartment, along with a piece of paper with the words, "A sea change." Midge is smothering the Marine with her drawings and things. She's trying to dominate masculinity the same way Gavin is smothering the Wood in his office with his pictures. Masculinity and femininity are trying to smother each other in Scotty's head. Here's another trick. Of all the colors Midge's wooden pencil could have been, Alfred Hitchcock decided to make it blue, the color of water. All of this is like another freeze frame of wood versus water. So let me show you what I mean about water. Remember how Pop Liebel owns the Argosy Bookshop, which means ship. Gavin Elster owns a ship-making company. When you factor in these two guys with this marine drawing from Midge's apartment, this might explain why Alfred Hitchcock shows the same sailor walking to the left twice later in the movie to remind you of me of what's really going on under Vertigo's surface. When you and I first see Madeline in Ernie's restaurant, look who's sitting with her. Gavin Elster, who makes ships, and by the way, a ship is referred to as a she, and Madeline is a she Gavin Elster made. But there's also a Navy officer next to Madeline. Naval officers, Marines, the Argosy, shipmaking, the color blue, sailors, all are reminders of water. Notice what appears between the two shots of the sailor, a fancy pink hat. This reminds me of the fancy pink brassiere that Midge is drawing with her blue pencil. If that pink hat is there on purpose, maybe it's another reminder that the battle between masculinity and femininity is still going on. It's a reminder that Scotty's feminine side keeps popping up. You'll notice hints of this feminine side in Scotty if you watch the scene where Madeline is about to go up the bell tower. Scotty holds Madeline in a way that looks just like how Midge held Scotty after he fainted. And in another shot, Scotty wants Madeline to snap out of her fog while striking the same pose Midge strikes while trying to snap Scotty out of his fog. But the clincher for me is that portrait switch Alfred Hitchcock pulls in the movie. Almost every time you see the Carlotta portrait in the movie, it's actually this one. You can tell from the blue dress and the illuminated area between the back of Carlotta's head and the column. The only time the portrait changes to the one you and I know and love is when Scotty looks at it dead on. Watch Scotty's eyes in this scene. He's looking directly at the painting, so the painting looking back at him turns into this one. The moment his eyes leave the portrait to linger on Madeline, Alfred Hitchcock shows you and me that the portrait has returned to this state. It's as if the painting is a mirror. Even though Scotty presents as masculine, when Scotty looks directly at this magic mirror, it becomes a sort of feminine reflection of him, of how society has convinced him he's somehow not man enough. Later, when Scotty's helping Judy with her necklace, like he's a boy playing dress-up with a doll, he catches himself in another mirror, which makes him experience the flashback to that specific portrait, that feminine reflection of himself. Behind Carlotta is a body of water, and the portrait is encased in a gilded wooden frame. It's another freeze frame of the battle between water versus wood. And Scotty is trapped inside it, which brings me back to wood. The handle of a broom is wood. Midge calls Mozart the broom that sweeps the cobwebs away. When Midge Wood tells the doctor she doesn't think Mozart's going to help at all, she's not really talking about musical therapy. She's talking about herself. She's the broom. She's wood. It's not the first time she and her music have gotten under Scotty's skin like a splinter. A broom in Scotty's kitchen starts out blue in this scene, but by the end of the scene, it magically turns red. If you look at Midge's kitchen, there is no broom, but when you and I get to the scene where Midge plays a joke on Scotty, that same red broom from Scotty's kitchen is now magically in Midge's kitchen. Red is Scotty's secret color. It's the color of his apartment door. He wears neckties with red frequently. And it's the first color in the opening credits of this dream he's having. This scene between Scotty and Midge will always be one of the scenes in the movie that rocked Vertigo's galaxy. On the surface, it's cringeworthy, but underneath, it's sinister. Scotty's Midge identity escalates the battle between water and wood in this scene by trying to perform a hostile takeover of Scotty. Here's Midge shown stealing not only Scotty's broom, but she's even stolen Scotty's secret color for her sweater she seems to wear throughout the movie. Always the same sweater, strobing through different colors. The scene culminates in the portrait she's painted with a wood-handled paintbrush, substituting her face into what is already a symbol of Scotty's feminine side, inserting the splinter even deeper. When Scotty rejects Midge and leaves, it's one of the major breakpoints from Scotty's perspective, the other being Judy's letter-writing scene. Scotty's imaginary Midge identity does something equally revealing in this scene. She vandalizes the portrait by making 3 quick strokes. If you know Marcel Duchamp's LHOOQ, it's basically a postcard of the Mona Lisa. Her image has been masculinized by the addition of a mustache and chin whiskers. Some say the Mona Lisa is a self-portrait of Leonardo da Vinci, his feminine side. During the opening credits of Vertigo, the mystery woman's face is painted in a way with Kim Novak's name and Alfred Hitchcock's. But these credits brush down from above. James Stewart's name is the only credit to swipe up from below, and it touches the chin like the stroke of a goatee and lands on the upper lip like 2 swoops of a mustache, masculinizing this unknown woman. I can't say for sure, but I suspect that's what Midge did to the portrait with those 3 strokes. By the way, who is this woman, anyway? I'm running out of time, but please stick around. I promise I'll get back to her later. Anyway, in one last gesture of defiance, Scotty's imaginary Midge Wood hurls the wood-handled paintbrush at the window pane, which, just like water, is a reflective surface. Just like Carlotta's portrait acts as a feminine reflection of Scotty. Let's go back to Wood one last time and take another look at Judy's family photos. The mother stands with a feminine child on a wooden porch behind a small tree or shrub. In the father's photo, his head eclipses the E in the word where, which I assume is part of hardware, and he's either plucking a pitchfork out of the trash can or, as I prefer to think, he's shoving something with a wood handle into the garbage as an act of war, as the sign behind him reads, to rid himself of another symbolic splinter of femininity. Like how Midge had her way with the Carlotta portrait earlier, Scotty's imaginary Gavin Elster has plans for the Carlotta portrait too. Scotty's nightmare montage in the middle of this dream he's having is actually a revelation of the plan Gavin wants Scotty to follow. It begins with the bouquet on the canvas. Gavin's plan calls for cutting out the tumor without killing the host. In the world, according to Gavin, men need to remove the splinter of femininity. Gavin cuts out the bouquet from this symbol of femininity, animates it, manifests it into something tangible so that he can destroy it, drown the feminine side inside of men, all as a blueprint showing Scotty what to do. When Scotty violates Gavin's plan by diving into the water to retrieve Madeline's body, Scotty ultimately ends up shamed in the eyes of his fellow men at the inquest. But there's a second chance for Scotty to make himself look good in Gavin's eyes, to rise to this level of manhood society has convinced him he should. There's a second symbol to be cut out of the canvas, a second object to be materialized, and it's hanging around Carlotta's neck. Scotty imagines Gavin Elster has a thing for necks. Gavin breaks a woman's neck in his master class, teaching Scotty how to rid himself of femininity. This woman is a blonde in a gray suit, and Scotty's imaginary Gavin Elster is specifically introduced to you and me, infected with the splinter of femininity just like Scotty is, wearing another gray suit. And knotted around his neck is a necktie whose color looks platinum blonde to me. Gavin's influence will make Scotty zero in on the neck later, when Scotty looks like he's on the verge of strangling Judy. Gavin pointed out the jewelry to Scotty earlier in the movie for a reason. The specter of Gavin Elster is teaching Scotty the remedy men supposedly need to cure the infection, and showing Scotty the one way to defeat the feminine side, the splinter, and things are about to get very, very ugly. There's a showdown between masculinity and femininity that's about to take place at yet another tower, another symbol of masculinity, the bell tower. You and I already know Gavin has beaten us to this location, and Daddy is up in that bell tower waiting. But look who else is making her way to the bell tower, the Mother Superior. Will she be superior? Which side is gonna win? Mother or father? Water or wood? Gavin or Midge? Masculinity or femininity? Will it be the angel on Scotty's shoulder, Midge, who wants Scotty to restrain himself in a chair, where he belongs, according to her, as she draws a brassiere, a symbol of restraint? Or will it be the devil on Scotty's shoulder, Gavin, who, while Midge is urging Scotty to do what's right, keeps nudging Scotty to cut loose, ignore what's right, and turn left, even when the signs tell him not to? Will the splinter, the irritant plaguing Scotty, be defeated? I'll settle all of this in my next couple of videos. We're almost there. Hopefully in this video, I've built up enough of a case to show you how a second Vertigo is forming, but please don't reach your verdict just yet. Because while I've been letting myself get distracted by the battle between two sides, by the irritant deep inside, I keep forgetting there might be another alternative. I keep forgetting under the right circumstances, an irritant can sometimes produce a pearl.